Okay, welcome, first of all, to all of you in the audience. This is now the parallel session number 3 about the changing business operations within a growing digital economy. My name is Kristo LEHTONEN. I'm the Director of Government Relations at NOKIA. But here today I'm more in the capacity as the chairman of the Digital Economy Group at Business Europe, which is the European Confederation of Employer Unions. And honored to be here with this distinguished panelists. And before we go into opening round, let me just introduce our panelists today. First to my right, we have Mr. Juris Gulbis, the Chief Executive Officer of Latte Telecom. Next one is Mr. Vladimir Basko, the Director General of the Scientific and Technological Association, InfoPark. And to his right, we have Mr. Haik Chobanian, the Deputy Chief Executive Officer of the Union of Information Technology Enterprises of Armenia. Next one is Mr. Paul Moffat, the Senior Counsel for Legal Transitions at the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development. The next one to the right is Mr. Joost van Iersel, the member of the Employers Group at the European Economic and Social Committee, as well as the President for the section for Economic and Monetary Union and Economic and Social Cohesion of the EESC. And finally, we have Mr. Alexei Kolb, the owner of the Kolb Group. So welcome to all of you panelists as well. Our topic today is digital economy and what the Eastern Partnership can do to help. Before I ask you my first question, I just want to set the scene by just using a couple of sentences about digital economy, because we talk about this a lot at Business Europe, obviously also at NOKIA, and quite often I'm asked, what is it? How does it differ from Internet of Things or smart manufacturing and all these other topics? And let me just kind of cover this out of the way and then we get going. Also to set the scene, really. Digital economy, quite often seen as the selling of goods online. That is one concrete practical aspect, but that really is the tip of the iceberg. And some of the other terms that you might have heard are Internet of Things, smart manufacturing. China just started a huge initiative called Internet Plus. This is the Chinese version and basically encompasses all the other concepts we just talked about. And really to kind of cut the chase, really at the bottom of this is that we are entering a new stage of technological revolution where we will have billions of people and objects being connected to each other. And some people have claimed that this will be a bigger revolution than the internet was indeed. And why this is the case is that this is supposed to bring enormous amounts of efficiencies, productivity, and hence economic growth, jobs. It is supposed to help us with answering huge societal problems like water supply, food supply, environmental degradation, and so on and so forth. However, there's also a paradox. Namely, as profoundly impactful as this will be, it also has big risks. Let's take self-driving car as an example. It's supposed to reduce the number of road accidents with a significant degree. But if somebody is able to hack your self-driving car, a criminal, you are in a big problem. There's a lot of discussion about privacy these days, just to give you a couple of examples. So the topic indeed is hugely interesting. And I want to kickstart the panel by asking our panelists one very concrete question, and we'll go in a round now for the first round. For your business, your job or your clients, your association, what does digitalization, digital economy and the things I just talked about mean, concretely speaking?
Yes, hello. I have a luck of representing company which is actually at the very core of digital economy. I would like to say that we are the facilitators of digital economy, as LEHTONEN is a company which operates both infrastructure for internet and also the service side, programming, cloud services and data centers. So we are facilitating the digital economy, helping businesses to be more efficient and create new services by using advantages of digital age. So I think for us here today it's important to understand how we can use the new technologies to facilitate cooperation between our countries and countries of Eastern Partnership. And we have quite a good experience which has been helped. It's been driven more obviously by our business need and business development rather than political process. And therefore today I think it's important to discuss how political process can facilitate faster development of digital economy, which would foster cooperation between European Union countries and Eastern Partnership countries.
Thank you. Mr. Basco.
Okay. First of all, I prefer to speak Russian. Please take units if you want. Concerning my businesses, I represent Software Engineering Association. That means many software engineering businesses. Our main market is North American one. Second one is the European Union. We could compare what is the situation for our businesses that are developers of new tools for digital economy. Because I can say, on another part of the market. And what we can see, that's very important to look on the problem systematically. We compare what is the situation in Southeast Asia, North America and European Union. And I can say that pan-European market, even European Union market, are not leaders in using new digital opportunities for businesses. It's a pity. At our idea that was born together with Belarusian IT businesses, Lithuanian ones and Latvian ones, is to make, I can say, to born initiative to change the situation, to answer the challenge. And what is important at this stage, we have to start work on the, I can say, to use the same terms, to understand each other in Europe, because there is many terms that used to, I can say, to define what is it, digital economy, what is digital operations, what is business operation in digital forms. And according to my mind, the most important and leading segment of digital economy nowadays is digital infrastructure of markets, different kind of markets. Markets of goods, markets of services, markets of capital, and markets of labor. And we are looking for a systematic approach, as I told, to see a clear picture. What is the digital infrastructure of market nowadays, at what we can do in coming days. To clarify, we could compare digital infrastructure of markets with, I can say, energy infrastructure, transport infrastructure. And in these examples, we have a clear vision. What way is the road, what we need to be connected from Minsk to Vilnius, from Riga to Tallinn, etc. There is no a rather different situation on the digital infrastructure markets. We don't know exactly what kind of components could be included in this kind of infrastructure. even named on the one list. What I can say about components of digital infrastructure markets, the famous one, e-commerce, e-invoicing, eCustoms, eLogistics. But what we are saying about paperless trade systems in Europe, in the European Union, we could compare, we could look, for example, South Korea, and we can find very well developed this kind of system, as paperless trade system. I could continue, but what is important for us just now, in these hours, that we are asking our governments, European Union ones, Eastern Partnerships countries, governments, to make decision about harmonizing digital market initiative, European Union and Eastern Partnership countries as flagship initiative, as a priority in our cooperation. I guess it's a first and very important step to resolve any problem in developing digital infrastructure of market, digital economy for pan-European market and pan-European economy. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Basko. And I think you brought up a very important aspect, which was that based on some critical criteria, EU is not anymore leader when you compare to countries like Japan, South Korea, as you mentioned. We will actually come back to this topic as well. Thank you for mentioning that. Indeed. Now next, Mr. Chobanyan, how does it look from Armenian enterprises' perspective, digital economy, and what could the Eastern Partnership help in this regard?
Sharing the opinions of my colleague, I want to continue that, yes, we are speaking about digital revolution or internet-based digital economy since a long time, actually it's from 19th. Over the last decade, the internet has transitioned from connected world of PCs, browsers, web services to hyper-connected mobile devices and cloud computing. And this is our reality, and we should give as much as possible advantages from that. And fortunately, the figures say that we can receive a lot of advantages from that. For example, in increase of 14% in countries' digitalization score brings 1% growth in GDP per capita. This is a very big number, and it shows that we don't have alternative. We should go on this direction. And this is especially crucial for emerging countries, because the numbers again say that for emerging countries, digitalization process bring much more advantages or results, both in economy development and especially in job creation. And what we expect from EU market or EU initiatives or advanced countries is cooperation, and we don't have another solution, and we have a right mind to go on this direction, our policymakers as well, because our success, because to be competitive, to be successful is crucial for us, and if we want to be competitive and successful, we should go through digitalization of our economy.
Thank you very much indeed. Next one will be interesting to hear the perspective from the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development. So Mr. Moffat, over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, and good afternoon. I'm very pleased to be here to participate in this this topic that's very close to my heart, the digital economy. I think for me and for the EBRD, the digital economy presents tremendous opportunities in equal measure to the challenges that it represents as well. It presents, I think, for the countries of the Eastern Partnership region an opportunity, I think, possibly to leapfrog, I think, given the great leveler role that technology has performed often on occasions in the past. But I think probably one of the biggest challenges that we see in trying to deliver the benefits that we've seen emerge within the European Union and to citizens, the European citizens, is the lack of some of the basic building blocks that are in place for delivering the digital economy. I mean, if you take the likes of broadband connectivity, that's a matter that deserves, I think, increased attention. It's something that I think that the Eastern Partnership, the European partners, both business, the civil society, and also the European Union can provide additional focus upon. I think everybody will agree that, you know, broadband connectivity, adequate speed, adequate capacity is something that no business can cope without. No modern economy can hope to compete nationally, regionally, or internationally. And that's a fundamental issue, I think, when you come to try and put in place a modern digital economy. I think what you see when you see some of the wonderful developments that there are on the digital economy globally, and there are many great innovations. And when you see the efforts to adapt them on a national level, what there's a tendency is to mimic the specific developments themselves. I think in the hope of you know, developing the next great iGadget, become the next Google, the next Facebook, the next replicate, I think, the next Silicon Valley. But there's not enough focus on what's necessary. The basic infrastructure that's necessary in order to deliver the digital economy in the first place. And I think that the Eastern Partnership and the partners that make up that Eastern Partnership can play an increased role. There are already, I think, many worthy and good programs at work, both in the countries themselves and at the Eastern Partnership level. The Harmonizing Digital Markets Initiative, the Eastern Partnership Regulatory Network, and they do great work in terms of trying to harmonize both within the region itself and also amongst the region and the European Union. But I think a lot more can be done. A lot more can be done, I think, in financial terms and non-financial terms. Financial terms in looking at what's necessary to put in place the non-physical infrastructure, the legal infrastructure, the financial infrastructure, the institutional infrastructure, and the like. And I think most importantly, I mean, what the digital economy needs to succeed is investment in the fundamentals, as well as some of the advanced areas. And I think the Eastern Partnership could play a role in looking at specific instruments to help smaller businesses, to help medium businesses, in order to adapt to the challenges of the marketplace, look at specific instruments. The likes of I think, Connecting Europe facility, I see, that has worked relatively successfully in the European Union itself. So I think, just to summarize, I see great challenge, great benefits, but I think it's something that the Eastern Partnership and the partners can play a great and increased role in going forward.
Thank you very much indeed. Now, Mr. Van Jersel, you have a unique perspective coming from the European Economic and Social Committee, and Mr. Moffat just emphasized the role of having the basic infrastructure in place. Do you agree with him, and what else could be done in the context of the Eastern Partnership?
Thank you. I agreed word for word what Mr. Moffat said, but let me put it in a somewhat different way. First of all, the word revolution. It's a little bit an old-fashioned word. I would call it a tsunami. It is a tsunami. It comes over us, and how do you prepare? How do you prepare to it? And the first thing is, when we entered this field, is awareness building. Awareness building among business and among policymakers. Because there are huge groups that are dragging their feet. So awareness is very much important. Then the second point is we have to link it at the European level to the re-industrialization, the industrial renaissance they are discussing so much. Well, initially it was said, okay, we need only manufacturing business, etc. Now, manufacturing without services is unthinkable. So it is completely interwoven. That goes that far that we now speak about the servitization of manufacturing. They are driven by the new services and the digital agenda. And there's a complete blurring of barriers between sectors, between manufacturing and services. There are no sectors, there is no manufacturing services, there is only a value chain. And the only possibility for Europe to play a key role in the world's economy is to have the upper end of the value chain. And that is in the digital development. And I would like to give you the definition we formulated ourselves on it, because there's much more than interconnecting. It's much more than interconnecting. We qualify it as a quantum leap that results from a vertical and horizontal cooperation from machine to internet, machine to human, and machine to machine along the value chain in real time. Islands of automation will get interconnected in innumerable networks and variations. Software and networks will connect intelligent projects, digital services, and customers to the new innovative products of the future. And they are innovative. They don't exist. So how do you reach an optimal situation? By predictability, by preparing, by creating a single market in the issue, review all regulations in the light of this new phenomenon, and at the same time in the private sector in developing new business models which are adapted to the new requirements. A point that has not been discussed till now in the panel is skills. This is a matter of the whole society. It is not a matter of some businessmen in a certain sector that are creative, etc. It affects everybody. It affects the consumers, it affects children, it affects the elder generation, and it affects knowledge, very much so. Before yesterday, 5,000 people were laid off in the Dutch National Tax Service, and 1,500 new people came in, and they were of a complete different nature. They are mathematicians, they are physicists, they are completely different disciplines. So we need schooling, training, and universities. And I would like to add one thing, that is the triple helix. That is the cooperation between governments, universities, and business in order to make programs and to make it happen. And then, very important to the audience here, is the regional aspect. It is not only an abstract wave of inventions that is coming over us, but we can learn a lot from each other on the spot. And there are programs in Europe we have sorted out, we have found out that are purely regional based in adapting themselves to the new revolution, and therefore less populated countries like Latvia, for instance, but also other countries in the environment, can make that quantum jump. Okay, very important is to realize that not all businessmen, entrepreneurs are on the same wave of development. So what we need is field labs, what we need is also coaches. Those who are in front, up front, can teach others who must become front runners as well. And I think that in all these fields, the European Union can play a decisive role, taking up the agenda of the reindustrialization, the industrial renaissance, and adapting its legislation, creating the single market, promoting the awareness, bringing partners together that were not together before, and bringing the good message. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. And I think you mentioned indeed one very important word that wasn't mentioned so far, which was skills. Now to you, Mr. Kolb, I think you have again important perspectives to this discussion because you are owner of a firm that is developing some of these solutions. So from your point of view, how is digitalization changing your business, and what's the role for Eastern Partnership?
Okay. I beg my pardon, I will speak in Russian because from the stage it save your time and allow to me speak more correctly. So, моя компания работает как консалтинговое агентство.
My company works as a consulting agency in implementing and launching software solutions in various areas. We work with logistics, tourism, medicine, and we often see that the most important, the most correct thing our customers need is knowledge. And I absolutely support the previous speaker, as I also believe that we do lack knowledge the most. But let's have a look at the impact of digitalization in digital economics in general. Well, what does business buy from outside? Raw materials and knowledge. Digital economy changes this situation in a radical way. You can buy services, knowledge all over the world. If the industrial revolution that occurred several centuries ago in the UK saved a lot of time because it allowed producing 100 times more the amount of products, now services, products and raw materials can be purchased anywhere. The business process itself is changing, and instead of machines used by people, we can see digital machines. We can see this industrialization 4.0, when even the specialists running these machines can be located at another continent. In business, the final stage of the chain is sales, and digital economy allows selling products anywhere all over the world. So at all three stages of any business, we can see radical changes. What I believe is very important is to establish at the very beginning of this tsunami or revolution of world economy, it is important to set standards. I believe many of you have a watch, and it isn't very convenient that there are 60 minutes in an hour and 24 hours in a day. However, it is very hard to change this, and it is very important at the very beginning of this digital economy to determine, to set correct standards. And for us, it is a challenge because before we set an economy on Mars, we need to try to set these good standards, good metrics for digital economy on Earth. So this is a kind of a pilot project before we colonize Mars. And we need to think about serious education of people. We need to train them so that they are ready to work in a digital economy, and we need collective participation, collective mind to develop some behavioral standards in digital economy. And I believe that Eastern Partnership could play a very important role and give a very positive contribution to this collective discussion and preparation of standards that will allow to apply minimum efforts when transferring the companies of most countries to this digital economy. We need standards that can be established before, not after. We shouldn't change afterwards, and it will be very hard to change, as it is hard to change the fact that there are 60 minutes in an hour. Thank you.
I think we already covered a lot of unique perspective, and I want to now dive deeper into one topic that I believe Mr. Basko mentioned first, which is the fact that as advanced as many European countries are on a global scale, we are not global leaders anymore, but rather countries like Japan, South Korea are the leaders. And one very concrete way to witness this is that if you go to South Korea and you start watching a high-definition video on your breakfast table at your hotel, you can go to the train and seamlessly watch the same movie all the way to work and continue. I don't know a single European country where this would be possible. And to give you one data point, when the European Union published its single market for telecoms package for regulation, they had a statistic there that by then, out of all the investments in the newest generation of mobile infrastructure called LTE or 4G, fourth generation of mobile infrastructure, out of all of those investments, globally speaking, over 40% had happened in the United States, more than 20% in South Korea, 13% in Japan. Guess what was the number for the European Union? 4. We are a little bit better now, but this is a big problem. And one more data point I can't resist. Out of those people in the European Union who have a mobile subscription, at the moment, even in leading countries like Finland, where I'm coming from, or Germany, less than 10% use the newest LTE technology. In the leading countries like South Korea, it's 70%. And what this creates is that the newest solutions, networks, applications are developed somewhere else. So this is my question now. How can we change this? And what is the best lever we have? Is it, do we have to think about the investments, like was mentioned here, about the operators, regulation, applications, and so on? Maybe we start with Mr. Gulbis.
Yes, thank you. I think this is a very important topic, and we can spend a lot of time discussing this. But touching on your point about South Korea, you can do the same thing in Latvia, because we are consistently in top 5 countries with internet download speeds on par with South Korea, and Latvian consumers are leaders by amount of data consumed from in a 4G from a single station. So
congratulations.
Yes, thank you. So here we are pretty advanced, and our fiber to the home network covers 60% of households. So infrastructure is obviously very important, but we have made investment in Latvia despite the very unhealthy regulatory environment. And the biggest problem in Europe in respect of infrastructure is definitely the over-regulation and unclear regulation for new generation access networks. And this is the biggest problem which should be solved, and I hope that digital single market initiatives will be solving it, but as far as I can see, it's going very slow, and discussions between the countries are taking a very long time. That would be, I think, the main lesson for Eastern Partnership countries when we try to harmonize our digital markets, is not to over-regulate as we did in Europe, because that I think is the main reason why Europe is falling behind. Too big number of small infrastructure players which are unable to finance the investment. Because when we look at Europe, at the European Union, it's about 600 reasonable size players in mobile business. If you look at the US, it's 4. China 3, so it's completely different scale, and telco and infrastructure business is everything about the scale. The next issue on regulation is that the whole ecosystem of digital economy has changed. We are still regulated based on the economy model which has existed in the last century, end of 1990s. But since then we have seen the creation of Google, of Facebook, of WhatsApp and other players which are effectively also telco players, but they do not build their own infrastructure. They pay very little tax, and most important, they do not have any regulatory burden as normal telco companies have. So it's important issue that these players are regulated on a basis of service that they provide, not on the basis of their legal registration address or on the basis that they have not been infrastructure players, because the service is what's important. And obviously the next issue is education and digital skills gap, especially with older or more senior population, and this should be addressed as well through the lifelong education programs. And here we are running in Latvia a large social responsibility program, Connect Latvia, where we are educating in IT skills senior citizens, and we have covered more than 30,000 citizens so far. So that can be taken as an experience to other Eastern Partnership countries as well. Thank you.
Thank you. I will now go in a little bit mixed order here, and actually would like to now jump to Mr. Moffat, because you mentioned the importance of having basic infra in place. How can we boost this? Boost investment?
I think boosting investment is tied very much to the approach on regulation, the experience of the key investors into the marketplace. And I think, you know, regulation on a European level has served the market well in many respects, but it's also been built, I think, in an incremental phase, in an incremental manner. And I don't think it's necessarily best equipped to deal with the tsunami of change, I think, that has been referred to elsewhere on the panel. And I think probably policymakers, regulators, governments need to have a more open approach. They need to have a more, I think, expansive appreciation of the challenges that there are in the marketplace in playing catch up with the established leaders, the more innovative neighborhoods of the planet, from America to South Korea to other emerging marketplaces that may not have as strict and as demanding regulation. I mean, obviously there needs to be some form of regulation in place, but it needs to be, I think, smarter. It needs to be more responsive to the actual developments in the marketplace, predictive of it to a certain extent, and not necessarily blindly following it. I think you see some of the issues in the marketplace of the ability to finance major infrastructure projects by European operators. And I think the financeability of that from a banking standpoint as well is somewhat questionable, given the need to have so much intense competition within some of the marketplaces. Marketplaces that don't necessarily bear that intense level of competition when you're looking on a more strategic level to see how infrastructure can be better rolled out, I think. So I think probably need for smarter regulation to recognize, I think, the necessity of taking a new and more expansive look and a more strategic look at regulation. I think education is very, very important in terms of an overall appreciation of both consumers, operators, government, and banks, financiers in particular. I think one of the issues that we find in trying to finance digital economy and knowledge economy type of operations, we try to do that a lot in cooperation with local partners, local financial institutions, and we find that there's not sufficient appreciation of the particular projects, the particular dynamics of technology, the particular dynamics of the digital economy and the products that are there and that are being innovated to serve the digital economy amongst the financial institutions themselves. And that results in a much more cautious approach to risk-taking, not the appreciation of the level of, I think, the leap of faith to a certain extent that's necessary sometimes to finance some of these emerging technologies. So I think that for me would be key. Fragmentation of regulation, I think, it needs to be overcome, more modern, and then I think the education side of things as well.
Thank you very much. Mr. Basko, I'd like to turn to you next. I think, as you mentioned this topic first, that the EU is lagging. Do you agree with what Mr. Moffat said? And from your point of view, what could we do in the area of legislation to help Europe catch up? Some of the topics that...
Because I'm not specialist in legislation. Sure. Okay. I guess that's what... Thanks. Maybe I will explain my position in Russian, because it's quite unique. Please.
I would compare the conditions of Southeastern Asia and USA with European conditions in order to answer the question about the legislation. Why, in my opinion, the US is ahead of us in digital technologies, business, economy, market. There is a high business innovation as such. New models of business are accepted quite fast. New operations are started quite fast. I do not analyze right now why, but I just state it as a fact. There is a high level of freedom and self-regulation historically. All the standards are elaborated by professional societies and business, not by state. Lobbying is very developed, and then the states are drafted and accepted by the state. That's US. Southeastern Asia, there is a high ability to copy the best things and high discipline in fulfilling the state priorities. They copy very well, and they take other ideas very well and implement them in life. That's their difference. What is EU? EU is a state with very different traditions, very different approach both to legislation and other things, despite some commonalities, and to self-regulation. So how should we move forward, especially if we do want to also work well in Eastern Partnership countries and together with them? In my opinion, as we are more or less democratic and liberal countries, we have to develop our ability of self-regulation of new segments that appear, especially digital ones. And second thing, it has already been mentioned, and it is related to legislation. There is always this question: will regulation be legislative or self-regulations? And in some countries where the law does work, in some countries there is a law in some area, and in other countries in the same area there is self-regulation, which is more efficient than the law sometimes. Then, about education. I wouldn't speak about education so much as about knowledge transfer. It's different. Usually when we say education, we mean universities. But knowledge transfer, it's a more diverse tool. And usually the speed of this transfer is greater and more efficient if the process is duly organized. How is it connected to the legislation? You know, good laws are laws that fit the tendencies and desires of the society, that there is a foundation for something to be regulated. if pan-European territory doesn't have new business models based on digital technologies, and there are no skills, then there is no foundation to develop new legislation. It won't work without these prerequisites if these new things are not there. In this connection, for legislation, knowledge transfer or education, if you so wish, is very important. I could continue, but I've already mentioned the directions I would like to move in.
For the comprehensive answer. Mr. Jobanyan, as you are representing Armenian IT companies, from your point of view, how can Eastern Partnership or the cooperation with the EU help to attract investments, maybe in Armenia, but also then bi-directional business between EU and Armenia?
Okay, from the business point of view, I want to mention that to ensure sustainable development in this process, in digitalization, we should have strong ICT economy, industry. And this is very critical for us because, again, I should come to the education system. And not only about e-skills, but in education generally, because I think that now the demand of education or demand of type of education is very difficult. Now we need much more flexibility and people who are able to overcome this all-time changing process, because they should change themselves, because everything is changing. I think in future, every 5 years, we will see the, let's say, fundamental changes even in digitalization, even in our all day life. That's why this is very important, but unfortunately, we have a lot of demand of specialists, and we cannot cover the gap what we have. In Armenia, we have about 2% of gap of ICT specialists in our sector. It's a huge number because now the traditional educational system is covering maximum 1%. It means that now already we have two times more demand than the educational system is able to provide. The same situation in all over the world, and they are accounting that in 2020 it will be 3 million gap in IT specialists in the world. So it means that we are growing, that sometimes we think that we are growing enough. It's 25%, for example, in Armenia for ICT sector, but it's not enough. We should double, we should triple our growing process in the industry, and the same in the Europe, in the world. So I think that this gap can covered from emerging countries, because from other side we have very big unemployment in other sectors, and through education, through trainings, through changing, through mind changing, and through fundamental investments in the education, through using new technologies in education, using new tools, alternative tools, not classical like a university, etc., we can overcome this situation. And I think this is the only way which can ensure success for us.
Thank you very much. Mr. Kolb, next question to you. We've talked about some of the obstacles, the bottlenecks, skills, investments. If you would have one recommendation for decision makers, what would it be?
Я с позволения вернусь.
with your permission, I will come back to my topic of developing some standards or recommendations. We have just heard about catastrophic lack of IT specialists. As if we speak about standards, we can consider this issue from a different point of view. For example, in Germany, there are more than 60 specializations in the IT education. In Belarus, 3 or 4. What do you think? For example, the IT Institute graduate, IT engineer from Belarus, how well will he match German or UK economy if the programs are different? If Germany traces 64 narrow topics, but Belarus teaches 4 topics, having not established united standards, it's difficult to plan the tasks to overcome this gap. Therefore, probably the Eastern Partnership should have maybe conducted trainings for the Ministry of Education of different countries to notify them about the changes in education together with the digitalization of economy. There is digital education, which should include many new directions, new aspects, new specializations. And so if we look at math textbooks of ancient Greece and studying from them today, we will not prepare modern experts. We have to radically change the education system itself. Without the change of the system of education, we won't be able to overcome this gap and lack of specialists. There is a very obvious example. For example, accountants. Accountants in any country. Accountant from Russia or Belarus will scarcely be able to work successfully in Latvia, and he won't be in demand in Germany. In IT, the difference in knowledge and competence is even greater, is even more fatal. What one country can teach can be totally differently taught in another country. Therefore, the Eastern Partnership, besides setting other standards, should elaborate a unified policy of Eastern Partnership country in changing the education programs. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Next one, I would like to actually turn to the audience and see if there are any questions to our panelists at this point in time. There seems to be one.
Hello, everybody. I'm Vilma Misukonen. I represent Lithuanian industry and European IT Association Digital Europe. My question is, I think in this discussion we missed a very important element. When we are talking about the e-government services to businesses, to citizens, these services are developed by the private sector. These services are hosted by private sector. They are maintained by private sector. So what about the public-private partnerships? Do you think that our governments are ready for public-private partnerships? In which stage they are right now? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Who wants to take the question? Go ahead.
That's exactly the point
Hello.
I would like to make. Government is important, and therefore it is catastrophe. It is a catastrophe that they are lagging behind. Not all of them. You have a brilliant neighbor, Estonia, with the e-government of Estonia, the star in Europe. And okay, let's all behave like them. You know, it's exemplary. That's first. Secondly, it is also a generational problem. Inside the European Commission, I have noticed that everybody who is below 40 is in favor and the elder ones, that means the directors and the director general, don't understand it. Yeah? That is in all governments the same, by the way. That has also been the reason why the budget for digital agenda was nearly killed by the council 2 years ago. Went back from 9 to 1 billion euros. Yes, the most important issue of all was totally killed. Okay, that means that, as I said, the awareness is of a gorgeous importance. Also in business, because there are many business leaders who are not yet at the point. Then a very important point to round up was what Mr. Basco said. He was talking about the infrastructure. Now, we still have the telecommunication catastrophe in Europe. Yeah? There is no telecommunications market. Yeah? Okay. How do you want to make progress? When you compare this to China, yeah, the United States, go on and go on, go on. Yeah? So they are. What we need actually is a wake-up call. We need a wake-up call in order to steer the investments, also public investments, in the right direction. Broadband, for instance, yeah, and closer cooperation from business to the governments in order to teach them how the world works. Last word is this. Indeed, self-regulation, extremely important, but we must create a single market. That means that not governments are taking over self-regulating issues in national markets and then become protectionist, yeah? That would be extremely bad. So the single market should be a free, open market, and that should be ensured by the Commission. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. You know, there's a saying that when you're having fun, time flies, and I see that time indeed has flown. We've used up all our time, I'm afraid. Very good discussion we've had, and I think we've established that there's a huge potential. It's a tsunami coming at us. EU is not a leader, but we have a lot of tools to improve. Basic infra is important. Changes in regulation are important, and skills, and so on and so forth. So I want to thank all my distinguished panelists for the excellent discussion, and the audience as well. Thank you.